Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we're going to be looking at Dragonflight default base UI modifications that have been apparent in the last couple of weeks. So there is a reason why I didn't do this video initially when Dragonflight was released, because every single week there has been new changes, new things added, new possibilities, and I wanted to possibly do multiple videos on this and just track the progress of Blizzard in terms of what they're trying to achieve. And it's very clear what they're trying to achieve with default UI, and that is basically to replicate or replace ElvUI from retail. So before we're gonna go to the meat of the video, which is basically your edit mode, and it's actually very simplistic or very resemblant of that ElvUI provides, and we'll talk about it. I want to talk about some of the things that I've been using a lot in Dragonflights in terms of UI modification, in terms of what's new. So there's a lot of things that are kind of new in terms of providing you with ways of changing your UI. Like, for example, a lot of people were talking about bags being combined into one, which again, I think it's a great feature. Is it better than Addon bags? Most likely not, but maybe it's going to be, it's still early days. This might be more implementation happening later on, but that's pretty cool. The main thing that I think has simplified my life a lot is this thing here right now. If you can see the search bar, if I want to do anything from the interface, there's a lot of things here that changed. Everything has been kind of moved around. You have a lot of keybinds, you have click casting, all of those things. But if you're lost, if you don't know what's going on, you just type in, for example, I want to enable every single bar. I just type in, I'm looking for bars, and I want to enable every single one or disable every single one. And this has saved so much time. I honestly feel this is one of the best features they added in a long time in terms of simplifying user interface, especially for new players. For example, sometimes you want to rebind or change the keybinds from your action bars and you're just not sure which ones are which and you're just confused. You can just go into options and, for example, type in Q, and I can see that my right action bar to button 6 is Q, and I can change it. So it really does save you a lot of time, and honestly this should have been added a long time ago, but seeing this in Dragonflight is only a really positive outlook. And before we're gonna go to the meat of the video, which is the edit mode, I want to showcase how Blizzard usually implements add-ons that were popular into the default game. And through this, we're gonna showcase the keybind, which is the click casting. So you can see here right now, this is not a new feature in Dragonflight. This is something that was added in Shadowlands. I can't remember which patch 9.2 or something, but either way, this is basically mouse overheating. If you're a healer, you're probably very familiar with this, or you're familiar with the add-on that was copied from, which is Clique. And this is my priest right here, and you can see here where Clique came from. You can actually kind of see it's almost a direct copy. Again, you can kind of see like mask skin being applied here, so it looks a little bit different. But the general consensus is that Blizzard basically copied this add-on and implemented it into the default game because it is very much needed. Most of the healers out there should or have to kind of heal with mouse over macros or use Clique, which basically allows you to create mouse over macros with a click of the button. It's very, very simple to keybind any of the abilities, and that's the big difference. Clique is an add-on that allows you to keybind any buttons, and the default Blizzard one does not allow that, which kind of makes sense. But what I've done basically in my Clique profile, I have for each spec, each class, keybind settings or keybind configurations that I can use for, I can just load this profile and play the game straight away, almost to some extent. For another example, let's go to my Restoration Druid, and Restoration Druid has a lot of different configurations because you have your Feral Affinity and things like that if you want to optimize, and a reuse of abilities is very, very common. So this is my Clique profile, and something that I do is I have a button assigned, numpad 1, which is my MMO mouse, is the first button on the MMO mouse, and I have it set to wild growth. I just keybind it and I have it set to default and friend. So what happens in this case, my numpad is right here, numpad 1. If I go to my Feral Affinity, it actually has swipe. So if I don't select or mouse over any friendly target, it's going to cast swipe. So I'm able to DPS with numpad 1 button to do DPS. But if I swap to a friendly target for some reason or mouse over it and then I press the exact same button, it's gonna cast Wild Growth. So this is how I reuse certain abilities, and you can do that with the default Blizzard click casting, but it requires you to create a macro that also is going to have a harm or a player or a friendly player parameter in terms of the macro configuration, and it just takes a little bit longer than what it usually does if you want to configure it through Clique. And this is the kind of differences that you can see when Blizzard is trying to implement their own add-on, or they're trying to implement an add-on and they're trying to copy another add-on. They don't always copy everything, and they sometimes miss out on certain configurations that make Clique great, for example. And now let's go to the meat of the video, and that is going to be the edit mode. And edit mode is honestly one of the best things that they added in a really long time, because if you've been using the default Blizzard UI, you probably have noticed the fact that just action, like, there's nothing really customizable in terms of where you want to put your elements. Like, you could move your player frame and you could move things like that, but it was very, very basic. So the fact that you couldn't move those things led you to using things like ElvUI, led you to using things like dominoes or bartender in terms of action bar customization, because the default UI has been, to, I don't want to be too mean, but it has been atrocious when you compare WoW to a modern game standards in terms of UI customization. So Blizzard is trying to catch up, and they're trying, and they've implemented a lot of different things in the last couple of weeks in terms of making your life easier, comparable to what ElvUI provides. So there is multiple presets in edit mode. For example, you can use the classic one, which I'm using right now. You can use things like modern one. And again, this gives you a default kind of look and feel where the player frames are, where the cast bar is. Again, the Vivify doesn't have a cast bar, but this is what the cast bar looks like. I think it looks cool. I think it actually looks like a pretty nice implementation, but you can go and change all of this. And this is something that I've been using myself. I've been using this profile here. And again, in terms of what you can change, you can move action bars wherever you want. You can move them all the way up here. You can right click on the action bar. You can change orientation from horizontal to vertical if you want, which is really important, because the first thing you're going to do, I'm not going to change things here, but the first thing you're going to do, you're going to go into options, you're going to search for bars, and you're most likely going to enable all the action bars. And they're going to look, and some of them are going to be horizontal, some of them are going to be vertical, but that doesn't matter. You can change that, and you can have a bunch of action bars in whichever orientation you want, in whichever size and things like that, because you can right click on an action bar. Let's say we're going to go with the top bar here. We can go, well, let's say we're going to bottom bar, action bar 2, and you can change it to vertical, like I said, horizontal. You can change the number of rows, you can change the number of icons, you can change the icon size, so it can be a lot smaller, and the UI kind of adjusts based on that. You can change icon padding, so you can have a lot more space between them, and you can change the bars to be only visible when you're out of combat or in combat and things like that. Some of the action bars have additional features, like you have the, for example, pet action bars, you can have stance action bars, and some of them will have additional changes. Like, for example, if you go to your player frame, you can change the cast bar underneath, or cast bar like right here. You can change your target frame, and you can have buffs on top, which usually what a lot of people who are using ElvUI will have. Now, you can also move your minimap button, but the problem with minimap button right now, you can right click on it and click header underneath if you want. I don't think it looks that good, but it also has, let's say we're gonna revert all the changes, but it also has your buffs and debuffs tracked here, which is my feedback for Blizzard. I don't know if they watch any of the videos, but what I would like for them to change in terms of making this default UI stick, because I still feel a lot of people who are really comfortable with ElvUI in terms of customization, it's going to be relatively hard for them to go into this default Dragonflight UI mode. The people who haven't been using ElvUI or who don't like ElvUI, they most likely will switch to it instantly. I would like for debuffs and buffs to be movable right now. The only thing that I have right now, if you look at it, is that you can kind of hide some of the things. You can't really move it at this point. The debuffs show up somewhere here, which I honestly think is a bad... I don't like where the debuffs show up. The fact that you have to go all the way here. You can move, for example, you can go into edit mode and move your minimap, but then that also moves all of your buffs and debuffs, and it feels weird. So definitely, most likely something that's going to change in the future, because again, there's still a lot of time left, but that's one of the things that I suggest. Another thing is the player frame. So the player frame right now is very, very bland. If you've been watching a lot of the Dragonflight UI videos, you probably noticed that the screenshot is very different. This is basically what had been teased in the early preview on Dragonflight in terms of the UI, and this is the player frame. And I think player frame is going to be a deal breaker for a lot of people if it's not going to be customizable, at least for me. I really want this player frame to be like, for example, can you detach mana bar from health bar? Can you change the icon image? Can you change the icon size? Can you change the way that the health frames or the health numbers are being indicated? If it's going to be customizable, because player frame is really important to the UI, to the overall aesthetics, at least for me. if you're able to do a lot of things to player frame in the future, I think it is going to be a big plus for people who want to switch away from ElvUI, because ElvUI provides so many different options when it comes to player frame customization. For example, let's go to retail. This is my ElvUI player configuration in terms of retail World of Warcraft. You can see here detached mana bar. I have different custom tags, and if you go to ElvUI, you can go to unit frames, you can go to individual units, you can go into player, and then you can see all of these little options that you can add. And it's just kind of insane. It's just insane how many options you're given through ElvUI. I'm not saying that Blizzard UI has to have this many options. It would be nice, actually. It would be nice if you would have this many options, but I don't expect miracles, in all honesty, because it takes a while to test all of these things. But if you provide the bare minimum in terms of editing the Dragonflight default UI, I think a lot of people who are really comfortable with ElvUI customization are going to find it hard to swap away. I would like to see a lot of customization added to player frames. I would like for example, this is a toggle anchors section. This is basically what Blizzard is trying to copy in terms of implementing ElvUI in Dragonflight. So I hope that Blizzard is going to add a lot more customization to player frames and to a lot of different things in order for me to swap away from ElvUI, because I think ElvUI gets a lot of negative press in terms of performance, because let's be honest, ElvUI is a huge add-on and it's always going to have a performance hit to your user interface or to your gameplay, because you can have all of these things. You can have chat bags, you can have nameplates. Like for example, you don't have to use any of these things. I don't use nameplates. I don't actually use group unit frames for something like party or raid, because I use grid too. So I don't use ElvUI's every single feature. I only pick and choose. So for me, swapping away from ElvUI would actually be relatively easy if the default Dragonflight UI is going to be customizable. And the main things that are barriers to entry for me right now is, can I make player frame look really cool and be customizable? Can I move action bars easily? Can I have the profiles, share profiles and things like that easily customizable, which they're kind of adding. Is ElvUI going to die in Dragonflight? I honestly believe there's going to be a huge amount of players who haven't used ElvUI, have been using ElvUI and they've been upset about the performance, but there's multiple ways to improve ElvUI performance. Keep that in mind. But if you've been upset with ElvUI, or if you're only using certain features of ElvUI, let's say for example, you don't use the health frames, you don't use the nameplates, you don't use the chat or any of those things, swapping away from ElvUI to Dragonflight UI or default UI is going to be relatively easy, because it'll provide most of the things that players need, just moving your action bars. And I know the skins don't look really good here in terms of, you most likely will be able to apply things like mask and apply a different skin to action bars and make it look a lot nicer. For example, maybe having the little keybind action bars like X or num here. You can see here, because I'm using num because a lot of people are using these MMO mouses. They don't actually create new buttons, they're just using numpad buttons. So they're just going to look num. That needs to be changed. There's also another suggestion that I would like, and that is to do with the player frames, especially for healers who are trying to heal right now, especially without add-ons and using default Blizzard implemented player frames in terms of healing. What I really don't like about this right now is that you cannot really test this. You have to join a group, you cannot really change the frame height, frame width, and see those changes. You have to join a group to do it. I feel like there's an easy solution to this. Allow players to show up these player frames when you're just by yourself, solo mode, something really basic to implement. I don't think Blizzard is going to touch player frames all that much. I think I'm still going to be using something like Grid 2 in the future, because it is very customizable. I think personally I will swap away from ElvUI. I'll be looking to swap away from ElvUI as long as the player frame is going to be very customizable in terms of where I can put my mana bar. Can I change the custom text in terms of mana numbers, because ElvUI provides so many features. In a perfect world, I would love Blizzard to take everything that ElvUI has and implement it in default UI with that amount of customization. That would be absolutely insane, because Blizzard will have to maintain it, will have to make sure it's frequently updated. I'm not saying ElvUI doesn't do that, because ElvUI developers are really good. They provide frequent updates. There's nothing bad you can say about ElvUI developers. They're honestly really trying hard to make the UI as good as possible, but it's not the same as Blizzard in terms of having to maintain it, in terms of having to optimize it. In a perfect world, I would love that, but that's not going to happen. I can guarantee you there's no way Blizzard is going to copy every single aspect of ElvUI, and this is why I personally showed you how they implement things like Clique. They implement 90%, but they forget the little details. There is a lot of time left, and I'm going to be looking to swap away from ElvUI into this. As long as it's going to be enough customization, I'm still going to be using Grid 2, I'm still going to be using weak auras, or at least it's not looking like anything is going to replace weak auras or the default Blizzard's player frame or health frames, or in terms of healing. They're not looking to be extremely customizable either in terms of the changes. There is still time, but let me know how you feel about this. Let me know how you feel about the default Dragonflight UI. If you're using ElvUI, do you think you're going to swap away? Do you think ElvUI is still going to be the way to go, especially if you're really comfortable with ElvUI configurations? Let me know how you feel about the progress that Blizzard has done so far, because I think it's been pretty decent. I think they're going the right way. It just needs additional customization options to make it perfect, in my opinion. Let me know, and I'll see you in my next video.